morning, everyone, and welcome into Wake and Take. It's your boy Jason, and we've got some football to talk about today. It's Sunday. It is week 1 Sunday. We have finally made it. So today I'm going to give you my top starts and sits by position, as well as a few flex plays to go ahead and help you out with your lineup decisions that you're making this morning. So go ahead, take out your coffee, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. All right, so we are here. Glad to see you all this morning. Full disclosure, and pre-recording this, but I hope to be in the chat this morning, answering all your questions that I can. And then hopefully these start-sit decisions that I've made for this video do help you in your process as well. Currently recording this during halftime of the Michigan-Texas game, and it is not looking great. So hopefully things get a little bit better by the by the time this video is out. You know, hopefully Michigan's made an epic comeback. But if they haven't, oh well, it's not like it really matters. Michigan season always comes down to the Ohio State game anyway, so it is what it is. But hey, we're excited. Actual football is here. You know, screw college. We're NFL fans. What am I talking about here? It's time for the NFL football. It's time for real football. And like I said at the top of the show, I wanted to do a quick start-sit video for you guys just to help you make some lineup decisions. So I've got my top quarterback. Well, I guess not top, but, you know, like, you know how these work, right? Like, these are not, like, necessarily the top guys that you have to think about, but, you know, players that you kind of have to think about. Should you start them? Are you sitting them? That kind of thing. So, like, you know, top-ish range, middle-ish range still, but, you know how this is. You guys know it. I know it's week 1, but you guys have been here before. I've been here before. It's good time. So anyway, let's go ahead and move into the quarterback position. Hopefully this ends up being a fairly quick video, all intents and purposes here. Jaden Daniels. Jaden Daniels, why not start a rookie quarterback with rushing upside in week 1? I actually really like this matchup and potential game script for Jaden Daniels as well. Tampa Bay is a very tough defensive front. They were top 10 in both rush yards and rush touchdowns allowed last year, and we all know it. It's basically just impossible to run against Vita Vea. So I'm expecting the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to kind of come out to a very fast start. I mean, this was a playoff team last year, so they're going to be good. And so I think that they can find themselves getting ahead of the Washington Commanders fairly quickly. But then also, I believe they're going to be able to stop the run on the Washington side of the ball. I think this is going to be very tough sledding for Brian Robinson, which will open the door for Jaden Daniels to use his wheels, whether it be his designed runs or just having to pass in a negative game script because they're behind and maybe he has to run outside the pocket, pick up some rush yards here and there. But even then, force-feeding Terry McLaurin. Luke McCaffrey somehow made the starting roster. Diami Brown had that good catch in preseason. Zach Ertz is looking good as well. And it's a Cliff Kingsbury offense, right? So I just think that there's at least very good potential for fantasy points this week from Jaden Daniels. Like I said, it's very tough as a running back to go up against Vita Vea and the rest of this Tampa Bay D-line. I think with that, they're going to have to abandon Brian Robinson pretty quickly in terms of just running it up the middle and just open up the pass game and make Jaden Daniels beat them, essentially. I think the Tampa Bay Buccaneers will be making Jaden Daniels beat them. Not sure if he will, but he will score fantasy points, whether it be on the ground or in the air. I'm expecting a pretty decent fantasy performance from Jaden Daniels, so go ahead and throw him into your lineups. If you tuned into Wake and Take's episode on Thursday, actually, I did show that Jaden Daniels is my DFS quarterback on my DraftKings lineup that I shared with you guys. So I'm feeling good about him this week. Go ahead and throw him in there. And a quarterback I'm starting to feel bad about, as you can see in the thumbnail, actually is Joe Burrow. T. Higgins is now doubtful as of recording this video. And Jamar Chase, everything that involving him is weird. He did return to practice, but he said he's going to kind of decide himself if he wants to play. And that even if he does play, he expects him to be a little bit limited, given he hasn't been able to practice with the team very much at all. And you know what? As we kind of see that, I think that really means that Jamar Chase is probably not going to play. And so that just kind of makes me concerned about Joe Burrow, right? Like, he has no rushing upside. Like, he is a pocket passer. And this is a very terrible Patriots team on both sides of the ball. So there's just going to be really not much reason for Joe Burrow to have to pass this ball at all, really, especially if there's no Joe Burrow or T. Higgins. So I think that they'll have to lean on the run game a little bit. Well, not have to, but they will lean on the run game a little bit because they can. And that will kind of just make Joe Burrow not that sexy of a fantasy option this week. He probably still has a floor. I mean, this is Joe Burrow. He's still a top quarterback for a reason. But he definitely doesn't have much ceiling this week. I mean, like, especially if both T. Higgins and Jamar Chase are out right now. It's looking like T. Higgins definitely won't be playing. It's still up in the air for Jamar Chase, but I'm thinking in my head what it's kind of looking like is that he's still negotiating. We'll put quotes around that there, that he wants to show the team how important he is in terms of running the pass offense in general. So I think that he could end up sitting or maybe just not even giving full effort or something. And that's just going to make it difficult for Joe Burrow with less than 100% Ja'Marr Chase or just no Ja'Marr Chase at all. I just don't think there's much reason to start him. There's some really good options out there that you can probably even pick up on the waiver wire, like a Will Levis or Jason Daniels, or really any mobile quarterback if you want to try to find a little bit of a floor and ceiling this week. So we're going to go sitting Joe Shiesty. Still do want to say, like, get him in Dynasty and everything, but I just, against the New England Patriots, like, why would the Bengals have to pass a lot? So I just think that this is a decent week to go ahead and sit Joe. Moving on to the running back position, again on the thumbnail, Kenneth Walker. We're starting Kenneth Walker this week against Denver. And I went back to look at my picks. For some reason, I picked Denver to beat Seattle. I don't know why I did that on Thursday's episode. So really sorry about that. I don't know why I did that, actually. I maybe it was covering the spread. I don't remember, because the Pick'em League is with the spread. So maybe that's what it was. But either way, Kenneth Walker against the Denver Broncos just seems like a match made in heaven. First off, this Seahawks defense is pretty damn good, especially at creating turnovers and getting to the quarterback. And so I think Bo Nix will struggle, so Seattle should be able to win this game pretty handily, or at least keep the lead. And then also the Broncos gave up the third most rush yards last season. They gave up an average of 137 rush yards a game last year, allowed over 2,000 rushing yards over the course of the season. Yeah, a lot of that came from the Dolphins game, but still they were piss poor all year against the run. Kenneth Walker is one of the best pure bell cows in the league. Great explosiveness and in a game script at home. Seattle Seahawks at home against rookie quarterback Bo Nix with their defense. I just think this is going to be a perfect game script for a Kenneth Walker breakout game. Get a ton of carries and opportunity, score a couple touchdowns, get 100 rush yards, feeling a huge week from K9. So we're throwing him into our lineup. And then at the running back position, like I said with Jaden Daniels, I'm not very comfortable starting Brian Robinson this week against that Tampa front. I really do think that Tampa's going to try to make Jaden Daniels beat them. And then also it's just a tough defensive line to begin with. So with that being said, I didn't want to double down. Why would I double down? I want to give you guys another option here. So we're going to go sitting Jaylen Warren. As of right now, it appears that Justin Fields will be the starting quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers. This is a quarterback that doesn't really throw it to the running back really at all, because he'd rather just scramble. But then also, this is an Arthur Smith offense, and what we saw last year in Atlanta is that you just can't predict it. You can't understand it. You don't know who's going to get the volume. And Jaylen Warren has been battling a hamstring injury the last few weeks, has had a few limited practices this week. I don't think he ever picked up a full. He is expected to be good for the game, but I just think with Najee Harris there and Arthur Smith there, who's going to love Cordarrelle Patterson way more than he should, and Justin Fields being the starting quarterback, I don't think there's much of a reason to start Jaylen Warren in this game. Let it play out first. There's some other running back options that I think you could feel a little bit more comfortable. Could Jaylen Warren, sneak in a few catches and maybe a touchdown? Yeah, but with Justin Fields, with him having this hamstring injury, with Arthur Smith being the coordinator, with Cordarrelle Patterson being there, who I know isn't going to get a ton of opportunity, but he's going to have an annoying usage because of Arthur Smith. I'm not going to start Jaylen Warren this week, especially if Justin Fields does end up being the quarterback, like all signs are pointing to right now. So we're sitting Jaylen Warren. Moving on to the wide receiver position, we're starting Tank Dell, guys, against the Indianapolis Colts. Last season, week 2 against the Colts, Tank Dell was a rookie. He had 10 targets, brought in 7 of them for 72 yards and a touchdown, scored 20 PPR points. It was a great game for him, really the coming out game for him. It's going to happen again. I mean, the Colts have some fairly athletic linebackers, so they should be able to cover the tight end pretty well and opening up the short end, the shorter routes, and intermediate routes and stuff for Tank Dell already. Pretty handily for Tank Dell. I think he's going to get a decent amount of volume and opportunity in this game. And like he did last year. And of course, we already talked about it a few times. I think that Tank Dell shouldn't be the cheapest Texans wide receiver. I think he's being slept on a decent bit. CJ Stroud has said time and time again how he's his favorite target. He asked the Texans to draft him. They had a great connection last year. He looked great in the preseason. Throw Tank Dell into your lineups. And lastly, I just also don't think that they're going to truly feed Stephon Diggs immediately. We'll talk about this, a little bit later in the show with the flex plays, but as we see with week one, usually NFL teams kind of work in their newer players, right? Like they're not going to go out there and give Stephon Diggs a ton of volume immediately. It's going to be Nico Collins and Tank Dell mostly, I think. And I'm sure Diggs will, of course, be involved. But this just screams Tank Dell week for me, especially in full PPR leagues. Throw him into your lineup, get some Tank Dell on your rosters, and then we're sitting George Pickens against Atlanta. Again, Justin Fields is probably starting, and we know that he's really not that good of a passing quarterback. Justin Fields is more dangerous as a rusher. George Pickens will probably still get the volume given that there's not that many options in the Pittsburgh offense. But what we saw last year from the Atlanta defense, and specifically A.J. Terrell, was their ability to lock down the number one wide receivers. And George Pickens is a wide receiver that gets locked down. He just is. He doesn't have a lot of separation ability. He's just mostly very good at making these contested catches. And he has some separation, but not against a corner like A.J. Terrell. Last year, A.J. Terrell, over the course of the entire season, only allowed 4 touchdowns, and only one wide receiver had 65 or more receiving yards against him, and his name was Mike Evans. And George Pickens is not Mike Evans. I love Pickens, but this is going to be a very tough matchup for Pickens against A.J. Terrell, with Justin Fields probably starting at quarterback. Go ahead and sit George Pickens and let this process play out. And plus, on top of A.J. Terrell being a really good lockdown corner, they brought in, Jesse Bates, as we saw breakout last year, and then also Justin Simmons as the other safety. Like, this looks to be a very solid Falcons secondary, on top of having a pretty solid pass rush as well now with Judon coming to town. I just think that this Falcons defense in general is going to kind of wreak some havoc towards the pass catchers and Jaylen Warren, as I said as well. So just go ahead and sit George Pickens. Now, moving on to the tight end position, we are starting Evan Ingram against Miami. This game looks to be a shootout, and the Dolphins last year allowed the 10th most points and the 7th most receiving touchdowns last year, just points in general and then receiving touchdowns. So with it being a shootout, with the Dolphins giving up a lot of points, with them giving up a lot of receiving touchdowns, I think that this screams a very solid game for Evan Ingram. Again, given it's week one, I don't think that like Brian Thomas Jr. and Gabe Davis are going to be truly fed. And we saw last year, Evan Ingram ended the season so well. And part of that was because of the Christian Kirk injury. And well, everything we're hearing that this week is while Christian Kirk is expected to play and be full go, he did pick up a calf injury and he still doesn't seem to be 100%. In fact, there were some reports that were suggesting that Christian Kirk will not be starting in 2 wide receiver sets this week and will solely be used as a slot receiver with Gabe Davis and Brian Thomas Jr. out wide. That suggests to me that Kirk isn't 100%. And what we saw from Evan Ingram last year when Christian Kirk wasn't 100% was phenomenal. Week 14, 32 fantasy points. Week 15, he had 9, then 17, then 12, then 24. Just a ton of opportunity and production went his way. So we're throwing Evan Ingram into our tight end position in a shootout against the Miami Dolphins. And then, as briefly mentioned at tight end, we are going to be sitting Dalton Schultz. I just think that with the Texans having Stephon Diggs, Nico Collins, Tank Dell, now also Joe Mixon, I just don't think there's a lot of opportunity for Dalton Schultz in this offense, especially with the Colts having some solid coverage linebackers in particular and strong safety Julian Blackmon, who's been pretty damn good over his career as well. I think that this screams a matchup where Dalton Schultz is going to be touchdown dependent, and sure, that could happen given he's a tight end. Like, that just sometimes happens, but I don't really want to bet on it. It's going to come down to that, and I think you can find some other tight end value out there, like a Mike Gesicki, for example. If all these Bengals wide receivers are sitting, someone's going to have to catch the damn ball. So I'm going to be sitting Dalton Schultz in this game. I'm expecting better games from the wide receivers, given the Colts are pretty good against tight ends. So we will be sitting Dalton Schultz. So those are our starts and sits for week one, guys. But I didn't want to leave you hanging. I did want to throw 3 flex plays your way. This will be brief. Chase Brown versus New England, as kind of mentioned in the sitting Joe Burrow part, I think with the wide receivers potentially being out, I could see Chase Brown not only getting a lot of work as a pass catcher, but also as a runner, especially in garbage time, because I could see this game not being great as the Patriots are bad at football. So we're going to go with Chase Brown. He has the explosiveness and the athleticism. So go ahead and throw him into your flex spot this week. Jamison Williams, of course, we're starting JMO in a shootout against the Rams. This is going to be a fantastic Sunday night football game. The Rams secondary is not very good, and I can see Jamison Williams starting the game off hot against the Rams in this little bit of a shootout. Matthew Stafford, Jared Goff revenge game should be a very, very fun one. And look for Jamison Williams to make a couple splash plays. And then lastly, Khalil Shakir against the Arizona Cardinals. I think this is another game that has a sneaky shootout potential. And as mentioned a few times in this episode, we see in week one that the players that had been on the team last year are, the ones kind of given more work than the newer players. And Khalil Shakir had a very good connection with Josh Allen, especially towards the end of the year last year. His last 3 games, all were in the double digits, 16, 12, and 17 points to end the year. And I think Khalil Shakir will be heavily involved in this game, especially out of the slot. Look for Khalil Shakir to honestly probably lead the Bills in targets. We'll see what that means for production, but definitely in PPR leagues, flex Khalil Shakir. So guys, that is everything I have for you. This was week 1, starts and sits here on Wake and Take. I'm gonna try to do this every week, record this during Michigan halftime, maybe, or something like that. But really appreciate you guys again. Thanks for tuning in. I hope to see you all Monday as we react to week 1's games. You all enjoy football. Have a wonderful Sunday, and I'll see you tomorrow. Peace.
From the Podfather to you, I deeply appreciate you tuning in. And many ask, what can I do? What can I do to help support the hosts, the research they do, the production costs? Go to PlayerProfiler.com, Dynasty Deluxe, World Famous Draft Kit, Rankings, DFS Dominator, and of course, Data Analysis. Subscribe to any one of those, and you support all of us and take Player Profiler to the moon.